Hi, I'm Josephine and I graduated in 2017 from UC Berkeley. I'm a college mentor at Berkeley Clasis and I am super excited to be sharing some principles for getting things done. I'm passionate about this topic not because I'm a productivity nerd, but actually because I received a lot of help from my own mentors with this whole area. I used to really struggle with getting things done, feeling overwhelmed by my task list and often really disorganized. But thankfully, I picked up a lot of tidbits throughout the years and I learned from some trusted mentors who showed me the ropes and helped me to tackle the challenges of life with small but deliberate steps.
Hi, I'm Mira, and I also graduated in 2017 from UC Berkeley. I'm now a college mentor at UC San Diego with Acts2 Fellowship. Like Joe said, we aren't teaching this workshop because getting things done just comes naturally to us. I was pretty chaotic in college, always cramming for my classes last minute, pulling all-nighters, and even skipping midterms and relying on my grades on the final to save my overall grade in the class because I'd start studying too late. I can't thank God enough for the mentors in my life who helped me change and taught me what Joe and I want to share with you guys today.
So, I'm not sure what your motivation is for taking this workshop, but maybe you're motivated to be more on top of life this quarter or semester, or maybe you're already kind of on top of it, but you want to improve a little bit. Or maybe you want to get better at adulting, and to that, I would say yes, we should all get good at being adults. During this workshop today, my friend Mira and I want to encourage you and give you some tools to lean into the challenges of adult life. We've organized this workshop to cover 3 different topics that all have to do with increasing your bandwidth: a principle called Getting Things Done, Planning 101, and Stress Management. With that, Mira's going to start us out with some practical tips from the book Getting Things Done by David Allen that we both found really helpful.
So, the problem as stated by the author, and something that I've experienced in my own life as well as seen in the lives of coworkers, friends, and students, is something called the bandwidth tax. Bandwidth is the amount of mental capacity or space that you have for things like decision-making, focused work, making meaningful connections, and planning. But our mental bandwidth gets taxed by the day-to-day little things. So let's take a look at a sample week, assuming things are normal and we're not under the COVID shelter-in-place order. Next week, you're hosting an outreach dinner, your parents are visiting this weekend, and you have a paper due on Tuesday. This morning, your friend tells you they're going through a hard time, and so you're trying to pray together today. And you're on the publications team for your fellowship, and you need to design an event flyer. Now, how are you feeling? That was me all throughout undergrad. Now, let's add to this some additional things that are in the back of your mind. Need to get a haircut. I gotta go grocery shopping. Need to cook for people coming over later. I gotta find classes for next semester or quarter. Our apartment needs more toilet paper. My backpack's a mess and it really bugs me. I need to call my parents, and I've been meaning to finish that book. Now, that little sliver of bandwidth that the arrow is pointing at is what you're left with. And as you can see, it's not necessarily huge tasks or projects that end up sapping mental bandwidth. Instead, it's the feeling that there are a lot of little things floating around in the back of your mind that you have to get to. All right, so what's the solution to the bandwidth tax? It's something called the external brain. This concept is very simple, so simple that you might think I'm joking, but it's the power of writing things down. David Allen, the author of the book Getting Things Done, has done extensive research on this topic, and the idea is that getting things out of your brain gives you a lot of mental relief and affects how you experience stress. Please read this quote with me. Your mind will keep working on anything that's still in that undecided state. But that kind of recursive spinning in your mind has now been proven to reduce your capacity to think and perform, and there's a limit to how much unresolved stuff it can contain before it blows a fuse. So, getting things out of your head and into a system can relieve your brain. There's a 3-step system that David Allen recommends, and Joe and I will explain each of these in turn. The first step is the capture step. Write it all down. Do a brain dump into your external brain, and our suggestion for this is to use a little notebook. There's something about physically writing things down that can be very helpful for many people, but you can also use a notes app on your device or anything else. The main idea is to write down every task that captures your attention, whether it's big, small, personal, or professional. Okay, now we're going to try this out. Please get a sheet of paper or open a new note in your app of choice, and for the next minute, let's jot down a few things that are on your mind for school this next week.
Step 2, process. Step 2 involves taking everything that you captured and asking of it, is this actionable? For example, get quarters for laundry from Bank of America. That's clear what kind of action you need to take. But write paper is a lot more nebulous. If you have lines from your capture step that aren't very actionable, try to break them down and make them more so. So, for example, I would break down write paper into these tasks: 1, research topic; 2, gather sources, quotes, and materials; 3, create outline; 4, write draft; 5, revise draft; 6, repeat 4 and 5 until done. Now, I don't know if you hate organized lists like these. I used to too, but I actually came to appreciate this type of structure after applying it in my own life. Breaking down vague tasks is crucial because if it's vague, it stays on your to-do list for a long time, taxing your bandwidth.
Now, the third step is the review step. Review and reflect frequently. Make sure that each thing on your to-do list is something you want to do in the upcoming week, and schedule it in. Be sure to look over your list as often as necessary to complete your action items and determine what you want to do next. Also, this is your chance to do a weekly review to clean up your lists, update them, and clear your mind. If you have larger goals you want to get to, this step is where you'll reflect on them and make adjustments to those steps if necessary. Now, with this system of capture, process, and review, you'll be able to free up a lot of mental bandwidth and get things done. Now, Joe's going to talk about planning.
On the topic of Planning 101, I'm going to give you some guidance on managing your time by planning ahead and putting your various tasks and obligations on a calendar. There's this proverb I really like that says, do your planning and prepare your fields before building your house. It would be silly to start tackling a construction project without planning, preparation, and some sort of blueprint. Likewise, it's much harder to tackle an assignment or a life goal without a plan of action. The Boy Scouts have this really valuable saying, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So what I'm about to tell you is not rocket science, but it is going to help you prepare. If something is going to be important to you, it will show up in your schedule one way or another. Time is finite. We all only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but sometimes when you're just thinking about all the things you have to do, it gets kind of overwhelming and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to end up writing that paper until the day it's due. But there is a way to avoid this. We can organize our overwhelming thoughts into a plan that can then be placed on a calendar. When you force yourself to think about the answer to the questions who, what, why, when, and where, you start to see what's realistic and what's unrealistic. When it's thoughtfully planned out, your responsibilities and tasks start to feel less overwhelming and vague. That way, your headspace can be cleared up to focus on what's right in front of you. So what I'm going to do is show you a quick demo of how I would put together a 1-week plan. All right, so this is my scheduling demo on how I would go about planning 1 week on a schedule, and I've made it optimal for college students, so hopefully it is more similar to what your schedule would be like. Maybe not exactly, but the idea and principles should hold for a wide range of scenarios. I like chunking them into a 1-week view, so that's what I'm going to be showing here. Some people do 2 weeks at a time or a month, just depends on what works for you. Some people like Google Calendar. I'm going to be writing with pen and paper or my iPad. And last but not least, always remember to set time and place for scheduling your week. So I'm going to just dive into it right here. So I split my events into fixed and variable events. The variable events are kind of more like my to-do list, things that aren't necessarily locked into my calendar, whereas the fixed events are things that don't change from week to week or a bit more firm. And so I start with those fixed events and work everything else around those. So I'm going to jump into fixed events colored in the pink, and I say I have a work shift on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the library. Always have that, so that's just going to go right into my calendar. And then the next thing that I know that I have is a paper that's due on Wednesday at 9 a.m. And that's a hard deadline. I don't really have the power to negotiate for that, so I'm just going to put that there. I have a math review session at 8 p.m. scheduled by my instructor, so that's fixed, as well as my math midterm that's happening on Thursday. So those are the academic and work things. And I know on Friday I have a Bible study, and so I'm writing that in there as well. So I'm looking, and that's, I think, all my fixed events for this week's schedule, and I'm going to now jump into my variable events. So I know that I have to write that paper by Wednesday and turn it in. So I'm going to start with step 1, which is outlining and drafting my paper on Monday. Step 2, revising my paper and keep writing it on Tuesday, so I'll be in good shape to turn it in by Wednesday, 9 a.m. I also know that I want to finish that practice math midterm before my math review session on Wednesday so that it's relevant for me, so I put that on Tuesday as well. And as I'm looking at my schedule, I realize, wait, I actually also have this other variable task that I need to do, which is my laundry. And so I'm going to just quickly write that in there for Tuesday night as well. I don't have classes. I'm going to combine that with the little yellow bar saying that I'm going to do those two things at the same time. While I wait for my laundry to run, I'm going to do my practice math midterm. So kill two birds with one stone. Next, I am looking at the roommate dinner that I had scheduled, but realistically, I'm cramming on Thursday and I don't have time for necessarily roommate dinner on Friday. So I'm going to actually ask my roommate if they want to go for a walk and walk over to Bible study together instead. And we'll put a rain check for that dinner. We'll definitely do it eventually, but I do want some connection time. So I'll just put that on my Friday. Alrighty. And then last but not least, I need to call my mom. And so I am going to add that into my Friday walk to my work shift. And so that's another kind of example of combining events. And with that, I've taken care of all my fixed and variable events. So some principles to keep in mind with this whole scheduling thing is to combine where possible. It kind of helps you to think about what things you might be able to do at the same time so that you can save some time. So that's a good principle to keep in mind. Another thing is to remember to be flexible and creative. So yeah, I might change my roommate dinner to a roommate walk, or I might squeeze something in here and there. I might make sure to schedule in my relational times, so calling my mom and other things like that. And last but not least, always remember to start with your fixed events and then do your variable events. That will make life easier for you. So there's my 1 week demo. All right, so let's now take a few minutes to write out your own weekly plan using the principles of planning that were demonstrated in the sample week plan. Now, don't feel like you have to be too perfectionistic about the format. Any format should work for now. It's just an exercise to get practicing. So there's my sample plan, and I feel a lot less stressed about the things I have to do. I encourage you to give this a try with your school schedule or your tasks so that you can start building a habit. If you know conceptually that planning is good, but you just have a hard time doing it, one thing I encourage you is to get a buddy or ask a mentor to sit down with you and go through the plan. My friend Mira and I actually work at the same company, and sometimes we actually do this with each other if we have a pressing deadline or we need some extra accountability in order to be productive. Sometimes, though, no matter how much accountability you have or how well you plan, life can be stressful. So, in this next section, Mira is going to cover how to deal with stress.
Like Joe said, life is stressful. But the better we're able to handle stress, the more we can get things done without burning out or getting overwhelmed, and the more we can lessen anxiety in our lives. I think all of us will admit that we have room for improvement when it comes to dealing with stress. I know I definitely do. Professor Kelly McGonigal, the author of a book titled The Upside of Stress, Why Stress is Good for You and How to Get Good at It, writes, "Stress happens when something you care about is at stake. It's not a sign to run away, it's a sign to step forward." In other words, by changing the way we perceive and respond to stressors, we can positively change how we handle the things that matter to us. A great deal of it has to do with our mindset. In her book, Professor McGonigal says, feeling burdened rather than uplifted by everyday duties is more a mindset than a measure of what is going on in your life. McGonigal writes about a scientific finding that made her rethink stress. Researchers studied over 30,000 participants over 8 years, and what they found was this: high levels of stress increased the risk of dying by 43%. But the surprising part was this: this 43% increased risk applied only to people who also believed that stress was harming their health. People who reported high levels of stress but who did not view their stress as harmful were not more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of death of anyone in the study, even lower than those who reported experiencing very little stress. Now that's really counterintuitive, but it's shown to be true. So it's not just our circumstances that determine the effects of stress on us. Rather, it has a lot to do with our mindset. In addition to managing our responses to stress, we can also manage our sources of stress. Some sources of stress are entirely circumstantial and unavoidable, like a big project or health problems. But there are other sources of stress that we do have some degree of control over, and which we can lessen. One way we can mitigate our stress is through learning how to better communicate. Let's think through an example scenario and explore some alternative responses we can have that can help diffuse a stressful situation. You have 2 midterms on Monday and Tuesday that you really need to cram for. You're the only person in your apartment with a car, and over the weekend, your apartment discovers that it's in dire need of goods from Costco. A round trip would take you guys about 2 hours, but you know you can't spare that time. Someone inevitably asks you, "Hey, can we go to Costco to get some supplies?" You're probably feeling a good deal of stress at this point, and your emotions may tell you that there are only certain inflammatory responses available. But you can take a deep breath and pause for a minute to think about the request and some possible alternatives, rather than refusing on the spot. So what are some of these alternatives? One option is to use a grocery delivery app like Instacart, but I know that may not be an option for some of you guys because it's expensive and college students are generally tight on money. Another alternative is saying, "Hey, I actually have 2 midterms, one each on Monday and Tuesday that I really need to study for. How about we just buy a small amount of the supplies we need from Walgreens or Target for now, and then we can go to Costco on Wednesday?" And another alternative is, "How about 2 of you take my car and go instead of me? Make sure you have the proper insurance though." Now, another source of stress that we can manage is the amount of time we spend compensating for what we forget. Now, before I explain further, let's watch this video. We're constantly bombarded with notifications and distractions, especially now that we're in shelter in place and school is online. And this makes things like studying take a lot longer than they need to. For me, most of my notifications were from social media, and I would burn hours on it. For you, it could be that, or email, or anything else. I couldn't study effectively, I couldn't be all present with my friends or family, and I saw this as so much of a problem in my life that I wanted to take my attention back. So here are some things that I found to be helpful, which you guys could also try. I used Google Chrome extensions like BlockSite to blacklist distracting websites. So every time I try to go to one of those, I had it redirect me to a quote, a Bible verse, or B-courses, which is where Berkeley lists all of your classwork. My roommate and I even charged our phones in the living room at night so we wouldn't be on our phones when we went to sleep, and used actual alarm clocks to wake up. I didn't even know my clock had an alarm function until we did that. Another thing I tried is I deactivated my social media accounts during weeks leading up to midterms, papers, or finals. And some of my friends and I did social media fasts, some of us for a few days, and some of my friends even did it for a whole semester. And I know that sounds crazy. It's hard to imagine even going without social media for a few days. But it was kind of cool to see, because not only did they have less stress, but with their extra time, one of them learned a new language, two of them learned how to play the guitar, and one of them finished the entire Chronicles of Narnia. Overall, they were able to use their time more productively. Ultimately, stress is an opportunity for us to cultivate resilience and grow in capacity. We might start out as easily crushed by the pressures of life, but here's a fact. Life is stressful. Our responsibilities are not going away anytime soon. But we've given you guys some frameworks and ways through which you can better deal with stress. And I admit, actually implementing some of these things and sticking with them for longer than just a week or two will be hard. It's going to take perseverance and time to reshape how we deal with stress. But as we keep trying, we develop resilience and grow in capacity.
As we conclude our time together, I'm going to recap some of the main points from the workshop. When we try to tackle life and get things done, we may become overwhelmed and stressed, but we can reduce the amount of bandwidth tax we experience by writing things down, breaking the things we need to do down, and then getting the small things out of the way immediately. We can plan our tasks more effectively so that we can use our time better, and by managing our responses to and our sources of stress, we can better handle the things that we need to get done without running ourselves ragged, and we can even increase our lifespans while we're at it. I want to conclude this workshop by reading Proverbs 24 together. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. One of the repeated words in this proverb is the word little. Just as something little can be destruction over time, something little can also build momentum and good habits and create positive change. Ultimately, one of the best secrets to getting things done is starting small. So we hope that you guys can implement some of the things that you learned today and that it can help you create positive change in your life.